pick and roll with it. Make a pick and roll with it. Betting weekly. Fast break. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown.
Welcome into a live edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break on this Thursday afternoon. I'm Sara Civian alongside longtime betting insider Doug Kezirian, reaching the end of a wild week here in the NBA. We're going to touch on a little bit of everything today, from the biggest moments of the draft to the Rookie of the Year field to tonight's WNBA slate. First, Doug, I just want to check your pulse in the week so far. After everything that's happened in free agency to last night's draft, is there anything in particular you just can't get out of your mind when it comes to the state of the NBA?
Oh, it's funny because we were told for months that this summer was going to be drastic in terms of trades and maybe even free agency because of the strict penalties with this new salary cap era, with the second aprons having such stiff penalties, not even just luxury tax, but taking away draft picks, things like that. So teams would be incentivized. And as much as we were warned, Sarah, like a typical guy, I didn't really listen. And I just sort of in one ear, out the other. And then bang, right out of the gates, the Celtics trade two of the starters from their championship team and key pieces, Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. And we knew this was coming, but we didn't. And so it's like any next move, I'm just not going to be surprised anymore. I have been surprised at the teams that did things like the Blazers. So, I did a deep dive the other day with like how Magic Johnson ended up on the Lakers. I was so curious. And back in the 70s, draft picks and everything was traded, and the draft capital was never really valued until, frankly, Jimmy Johnson understood the value of a draft pick with the Herschel Walker trade with the Dallas Cowboys. But even now, knowing what we know, there's still going to be dumb front offices. And I still am scratching my head at some of these moves that I just don't understand. So Celtics make all the sense in the world, but these other teams, I just wonder who's running, who's calling the shots. But a lot of it depends on their shelf life and trying to get another contract and not get fired. So that's part of this equation, and that's what I keep coming back to. So I'd be concerned if I were an owner. I'd also be really rich, but I'm you got to expect the unexpected, and I'm not sure I'm prepared for it.
Are you hinting at the Pelicans a little bit here with the
Yes.
madness they have done? Can we touch a little bit on that?
Well, they trade away CJ McCollum, which is fine. He's an expiring deal, so he's valuable. But you go get Jordan Poole, and I like Sadiq Bey, but Poole, I guess he's demonstrated he can be okay for a championship caliber team because he was that in Golden State. But he was a liability. He ended up playing himself off the court. I think he's a disaster. I wouldn't want any part of him, especially at that price. I just think he could have got more for McCollum. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine these teams are making calls. I just don't think they're good negotiators, some of these guys, and that's okay. Certain things require different skill sets, right? In our profession, you have to be good at X and Y and Z, and some of us are better at X and Z, but not Y or whatever it is. I bet you some of these front office guys are really good at salary cap maneuvering, drafting, scouting talent, but not good at negotiating. And we're seeing that in a lot of ways because these valuable pieces of commodity, like Anthony Simons and CJ McCollum, I just think they're not commanding enough on the market right now. And there's going to be that time will tell as we see other guys who are similar value and expiring deals get traded and what they command. But I just don't see the logic in some of these trades, like you mentioned, the Pelicans being Exhibit A.
Are you telling me it's a great time to have someone like Brad Stevens in your management?
Yes, for sure.
That's what I love to hear. But when it comes to the Pelicans, it really is like I sometimes I bend over backwards trying to understand these decisions. Like maybe I'm not as smart as these. They're playing chess, not checkers. But it does feel like they're trying to go in all in without like a sniff of defense. It's just hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, I mean, so the layers to this is we don't know everything, right? We don't know that if an owner walked in or picked up the phone and said, you have to draft this guy or you have to trade him, I don't care. So there's other factors. We don't know if there's stuff going behind the scenes whether it be stuff extracurricular or whatnot, an agent this. There's often more to the equation. I get that. For example, you hear when Luka was traded to the Lakers, they didn't make any calls. And then later you heard that they did call Minnesota about Anthony Edwards, but they don't want to say that they called another star because that you don't want that frame. So there's definitely things that are wink, wink and understood. I mean, I know for a fact, just talking to people in my circles in the media world, like there's much more that went down with Udoka out of Boston, stuff like that. Not just what was reported, which was a lot, trust me, but there was other stuff too. And so there's just more to it. But sometimes they are that dumb. I mean, David Kahn famously drafted 2 point guards right ahead of Steph Curry. And one was Johnny Flynn from Syracuse, who no one thought was going to be that good. And then the Ricky Rubio one is at least somewhat justifiable. So sometimes they are just that silly. You had a front office GM said there's only 3 good players in this draft. That your Damian Lillard went 7th, and things like that. So you'll hear comments, and their ignorance is really exemplified. But sometimes news will surface that will explain and justify some of it.
Well said. It really is kind of a wait and see sometimes. I'm very much waiting to see on this one. And now we can head over to the draft. There weren't too many surprises last night with Flag going number 1 to the Mavs and Harper going number 2 to the Spurs. And your overbet on Queen hitting, of course. But the Trailblazers made a pretty stunning move selecting China center Yang Hansen, who was projected to be a mid to late second-round pick at number 16. I mean, he wasn't even invited to the green room and was sitting in the stands when his name was called. It was a great moment to watch. But do you see Portland's vision with this pick or not?
So my biggest concern with these is no, I mean I don't, but I'm also not attending every workout. And there's been times I remember when Hashim Thabit was playing for Memphis Grizzlies after being drafted so high, and I went and saw him at Summer League in his first game, and 2 trips up the court, I just look at my buddy, I go, this guy stinks. He's never going to play in the NBA. Like you can just tell right away. So if I was privy to the workout, I would say that as well. But in college, I thought he'd be pretty good because he blocked everything in sight over at UConn. Hanson's weird because he was the 35th player on the big board of a lot of teams, but you also don't know. I mean, let's say another team wanted to draft him at 17, and they're like, "Oh, he's going to go 35. We can use our second round pick and trade up." Well, then Portland picks him. So you don't know what other teams have been scouting him, and I would venture to say they probably have heard. Portland probably heard other teams were interested. But last year they took Klingon, and I didn't love that pick because they also had Ayton, but Ayton was wearing out his welcome there. So I mentioned this the other day. That's the range 16, 13, 15. I mean, that's where like Giannis was drafted. Teams look at the ceiling and the upside of a player around 15 and 16. Like that's where they said, hey, let's take a shot at this guy. He may not be around the beginning of the second round. Sometimes, especially international players, teams stash a player overseas that they drafted. That happened with not Darko, but sorry, I'm blanking on it.
I
Anyways,
believe in you. It'll come back to you.
the Sixers had stashed someone as Saric. They had done that with Saric.
There you go.
So you just don't know. And then sometimes, I used to make fun of teams like, hey, if you had a guy 28 and you were drafting 18th, who cares? Take him 18. You don't have the 28th pick. The next pick's 36. So just take him at 18 or whatever it is, right? So sometimes you just got to grab the guy you want and not worry about it. And I'm glad to see that teams did that because I think more teams should do that.
100%. And I mean, there's something to be said about the confidence that you can instill in the guy that you actually want, saying, hey, we do really want you a lot. Now, better play like it.
Right. And you're right. That does instill confidence because a lot of times when guys get traded, they have to condition themselves to shift their focus away from this team didn't want me to this team does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important too as well. And then you got to live up to the expectations, like you said.
100%. All right, it's time to get into Rookie of the Year market. But first, I want to remind y'all to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can keep racking up these dubs together. And we love nothing more than when you guys jump in with your takes and your questions. We do this live because we are a group of people from all over the sports world who love winning bets and who love answering the questions you actually really have. So ask away throughout the show and get your best bets ready for the end of the episode. All right. The first round is over, and it's time to look at the Rookie of the Year odds. It's no surprise to see Cooper Flagg as the favorite for next season's Rookie of the Year at minus 177. But he's joining a Mavs team in a position to make the playoffs with a lot of depth around him. Realistically, how much do you think he's going to play?
So I go back and forth because he's perceived by many to be NBA ready, right? And he did
Mhm.
so well in Team USA and all that stuff. So he jumped off the screen, so to speak, and was dominant. And that was not, necessarily last week either. So he's filled out a little more since then. He's grown as a player. I couldn't fault anyone for betting this if they had unlimited cash and didn't mind tying it up for, I don't know, 9 months or 11 months. So if you have no issue, that's fine. I just wouldn't want to tie up money for that long because let's hypothetically just play this out. Let's say the first month of the season, which again is not even next month, it's 1 month into the next season, is mid November, and he plays really well. Like, what's Flag going to go to? Minus $3, minus 250. So what? So you missed the $1.75, 77 bet. Who cares? The things you want to do in these futures markets is long shot odds or plus money. If you think something's going to drastically change, let's say you love the upside and the playing availability or opportunity of a guy like Trey Johnson or Ace Bailey with Utah and think, it's complete rebuild at Utah. He's going to get so much usage and volume. Well, plus 700 can go to plus 250 really quickly. And if you remember a couple years ago, with Wemby and then Chet Holmgren, they flip flop for Rookie of the Year for the first couple months of the season. So you'll see it back and forth. So $7 may disappear if Flags unfortunately would sustain an injury or just not getting the opportunities in Dallas alongside other players that command the ball a lot, like Anthony Davis, or if and when Kyrie comes back from the ACL injury. So there's ways where Flag could be the most talented and defensively he could be really good, but not have the usage. Now, with that being said, we also thought that with Paige Beckers, and she's minus 2,000 right now, and she was like minus $3. So yeah, are you kicking yourself because you missed out on a minus $3 for Paige Beckers, who's going to win this thing at Rookie of the Year in the W? Yeah, but that season's shorter. That wouldn't cash until September, whereas this would not cash until June of next year. So I think it's pass or maybe one of the long shots for these Rookie of the Year odds. The problem is the odds makers know what we know, which is not much, but also know where they can project playing time. And it feels like the market's pretty fair. I'm not sure who I would look in terms of like playing time that would jump out or guys that can really shine. I mean, the Bulls have been pretty good at scouting talent. They saw that this year late in the year with their starting guard who blanking on that begins with a B, but Noah Senge, maybe he jumps off the screen and plays great this coming year. I do think the concept of Trey Johnson being among the favorites, the second tie for the third favorite because of the Wizards being the Wizards. So I think the usage can certainly get there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you see this all the time across every sport year after year. It's typically not even like the person who ends up being the best player of that draft class is the Rookie of the Year. So, and there's so much that needs to be said about that, whether it's the usage or the injuries or whatever. It doesn't necessarily, it's not so simple, and there's a lot of context involved.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are drafts where statistically it says that the best player in this draft is not going to be the number one overall pick. Now, that doesn't mean he's the number two pick either, but I think I'd be stunned if Cooper Flag's not the best player in this draft because the scouting's getting better and better. So teams are getting more accurate in more recent years, but he's been so polished since day one. And we have seen other drafts where the number one pick was the best player, like Cade Cunningham, things like that. Um, so, but if it's not that, then who? And I don't know if it is. Like, is it Ace Bailey? Is it Harper? I don't know because everyone's got upside. Edgecombe's got huge upside. But trying to take that information and apply it to Rookie of the Year odds, I'm just not ready to do that right now. And we won't know a lot until summer league. So you just got to be careful in that regard. Extending yourself on too many long shots because some of these guys are just not going to get the opportunity.
Right. 100%. There's so many different factors. It's a little too much for me at the moment. But speaking of long shots, there's one I kind of want to extend, and I want to get your vibe on it. The West is obviously a gauntlet, and it's probably more prudent to bet on the wide open East or just wait until the dust settles for a second and bet on all team futures later. But on Bet Rivers right now, Dallas is plus 3,400 to win it all, plus 1,700 to win the Western Conference, and plus 1,300 to win the Southwest Division. Is this recency bias talking on my end, or with Kyrie eyeing a return at some point next season, flag in the mix, and the Mavs still looking to add someone like CP3, perhaps? Am I wrong for thinking the odds makers are underestimating this team?
No, I don't think so. And Albert Nguyen was on the show, Analytics Capper, and he was pushing the Mavs a little bit. And now lives in Dallas, and I was giving him, teasing him a little bit about it later on. And I actually think they make a lot of sense because they have big pieces that were hurt last year in Gafford and Lively, right? And then AD. Now AD's probably going to get hurt again, but he's still so effective when he's in. And if Kyrie comes back and is healthy, and you have some key players like Max Christie and stuff like that, it's a dangerous team that's defensive minded, and Cooper Flagg's a guy who can play defense right away. So it's a dangerous lineup. Jason Kidd's really well thought of in terms of the type of player is, and don't forget about Klay Thompson. So they have a lot of pieces. Dinwiddie off the bench. Even if Exum comes back, like there's a lot to like with this team. And when we talk about the West being a gauntlet, and it is, you have to win 3 games against good opponents, but you don't have to beat all the teams.
Yep.
So that is something to keep in mind. You don't have to beat everyone. You just have to beat the ones in your path, kind of like the Thunder laid out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And man, it's tempting. It really is, because they could easily get like the 5 seed. And they have some pieces to the puzzle. Some of those guys I mentioned that they can flip for like a expiring deal, or someone who's really valuable, or they can make a Giannis trade without flag. I'm sure Milwaukee won't go for it, but if their hand is forced, then they might have to. And I can see Dallas at 3,400 to 1 being very enticing in this new open NBA, and other teams are going to have to shake things up this summer too.
Right. There's a lot going on right now. And even like with or without flag, it just looks like the Mavs are pretty stacked. But then you look at every other team and so are they. So it really is. I mean, that's why the odds are what they are. But at the same time, there's definitely a little bit of value there.
I agree. I think 34 is the one. Now, I was talking about earlier about teams that, lines that move, things like that. Like that's something that will drastically move in a short amount of time, right?
Right.
You know, not grabbing minus 177 with Flag's rookie of the year odds will live, but not grabbing 3,400, like that's important. I gave something out the other day with the WNBA at 28 to 1. Then it moved to 1,900, and now it's 1,400, right? Like the Mercury to win it all. So sometimes there will be opportunities that you need to pounce on. And I would say plus 3,400 actually is something to probably grab.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I feel like maybe I won't bet the house on it, but I will put a small wager on that before a
Right.
Giannis trade happens or something of that nature.
And that's the thing, just a nibble, right?
Yeah.
Just a nibble.
Just a nibble. No harm in that. All right, folks. It's almost time to look ahead to tonight's WNBA slate. But first, make sure you're all signed up for the newsletter at bettingweeklystudios.com for weekly betting tips and all the extra insight your heart could possibly desire. All right, we've got 2 more WNBA games on slate tonight. And if you haven't been paying attention, you are missing out on some major potential earnings, as Doug here has yet to lead me astray. Doug, our Angel Reese over 3.5 assist bet hit Tuesday night, and we've got Sparks versus a Fever team who will be without Caitlin Clark. We've also got Mystics versus Aces. What are you eyeing here tonight?
Tough card. Fever and Sparks is tough without Caitlin Clark. Now, she was bothered by a growing injury that they didn't report necessarily right away, but she was having a horrible stretch, 3 straight games. I was actually going to look to her points prop under. I thought something was wrong, and she was just trying to play through it. Now, this Sparks defense is pretty bad, and this Fever squad has been okay without Caitlin Clark, but only when they have both their backup point guards playing that have a similar style. That's Sydney Colson and Ari McDonald. Fast, quick. When Stephanie White bizarrely tried to run the offense through Sophie Cunningham and stuff, the offense completely stalled. So when they lost to the Sun when Colson got hurt during the game or in the first quarter. So in terms of this matchup, I don't think the Sparks are very good at all. I think they're really bad. I'm afraid they're going to miss the playoffs, and there's not enough time for when Cameron Brink comes back. So I don't want to grab the points. I do know a sharp guy that did take the +6, and it's tempting, but this Sparks team's just not good. They give up too many points. And as good as Caitlin is, I think this offense is clicking. So I would look at the team total for Indiana. Now they have a big game tomorrow against Dallas, in Dallas against Paige Becker. So hopefully Caitlin Clark can play because it would be, the two back-to-back number one overall picks in a high-profile game and things like that. So I'm going to look at the Fever over 87.5 points. Even without Caitlin Clark, I think they can light up this Sparks team. So I'll go over 87.5 points for Indiana minus 108 because I think Kelsey Mitchell's finding her rhythm and things like that.
I think that's an interesting one, especially each of the Sparks' last 7 games in Indiana have gone over the total points line. And it's been mostly because the opponent, the Fever, have scored a lot of points. So I feel like that's a pretty fantastic bet when it comes to this. And there's people waiting in the wings to kind of prove, and this happens with the Fever so often, that they aren't just a one-man show. Like, they are not just Caitlin Clark. There's a lot more to them, potentially. Like, the pieces have not fully come together. You can see some of the struggles, especially on defense, but on offense, when Stephanie White is kind of letting them play correctly, they have some upside there.
Right. And they understand the pace, and I like the spacing. They have some nice offensive sets, and part of their problems earlier in the year wasn't just the point guard, although that was a big issue when Caitlin Clark was hurt, but it was also DeWanna Bonner. She was clogging things up and hitting the side of backboards on short corner threes and airballing others. Like, she wanted to play more, but she just wasn't good. And Lexi Hull was a better fit for their offense and crashes the boards and just a good fit. Now, I think Sophie Cunningham sneaky stinks and is not good
Oh,
at
yeah.
all in terms
Nothing
of
sneaky, I fear.
yeah, her speed, and she can shoot okay, but they're thin. But if Kelsey Mitchell can, show more initiative on offense, especially with Caitlin Clark out, and they run their offense and the bigs play well, and I think this team can light up the Sparks. Sparks are really bad defensively. I think this should be a really good game. Now the spot's not great, coming off a big win in Seattle, but Caitlin didn't do much, so I'll take them. I'll take them over their team total. I don't trust the Indiana defense that much, but I think this LA team is kind of stinks too at times.
I definitely hear that. And it stinks that Bonner got waived, but she's such a legend. But at the same time, I agree with your take that it kind of opens up the floor for a different type of opportunity when that just obviously was not clicking there.
I mean, look, if she wants to try to win a title, do it with a good
Yeah.
team, and then you're not going to play much. Or she's going to want to go play with Alyssa Thomas in Phoenix, and there's a room
Yeah.
for it. Fine, but it's not like the Fever weren't giving her a chance. I mean, they wanted her to start and play well, but she wasn't good, and that's a problem. And sports are one of the few meritocracies we have left on this planet. And if we can have that's the way it should be. And if she's not getting it done, she's not getting it done. And so be it. They're a better team with her off the bench or her not playing at all than they were with her starting. And, mutual breakup, as we all like to have in our lives.
100%. So hopefully that works out elsewhere, but it was not working out there. Would you like to discuss anything about Mystics Aces? I know Wilson just came back and in the process became the first WNBA player to hit 5,000 points, which is wild. And it goes to show how much of a GOAT she is. But is she going to kind of run out of gas after that? Or do you think she's got more in the tank right now?
Well, she's not as dominant as she was last year, but she's still among the best players in the league. I would say certainly top 5 still. And we'll see what happens the rest of the year. She missed some time, clearly. And we got there yesterday with our first half minus 10.5. 11.5 didn't get there. She had a silly foul that allowed the other team, Tina Charles, to have 2 free throws, and bad beat if you laid the 11.5. But we had 10.5 at Bet Rivers during the show, so that best bet won. The question is this line too high? And I think it's a little too high. I'm not running to the window to grab the Mystics +8, but I really like how they're playing lately. And there's just so much to like with them. So I would lean to the Mystics plus the points, get 8. There, earlier in the day it was 8.5. Maybe it'll come back, but that's where I am. And this Mystics team's really good. First of all, they're really deep. and they have enough scoring. The key is Brittany Sykes. I mean, she missed the last game. That's an important part because I'd say she's probably their best player. So that's the key for me with Sykes. Now they managed and they did well in their last game, but she remains questionable right now. And she did participate in the shoot around this morning, according to the Washington Post. So that's encouraging. But I'd say grab the points with Sykes. She's has such a presence, and she instills such competitiveness, and it's a trickle down effect to her teammates. So there's just so much to like in that regard, and that's why I lean to the dog plus the 8. But I wonder if the Aces are going to break out. They just killed the Sun. They opened the game 19-0, I think. Well, Connecticut's just a disaster right now. They can't score, and they're on this tough road trip. I think we're gonna have to bet against them again the next couple games. And I just don't know if the Aces are clicking yet. Maybe they do. Maybe this is a breakout game. And I don't like the bigs for the Mystics. I don't like Stephanie Dolson on defense. She can shoot the 3, but I think Asia should just eat all game. And Shakira Austin's a good player, but she can't start and guard Asia. So Asia should feast in this game.
I'm with you on that. I always want to see her succeed. And I do feel like the Aces are kind of gaining momentum. It's like when you make the final so many times, when you go so many times so far, it can be hard to kind of care about the regular season. But then there's always times where these great teams and these great players start to build momentum at least a spurt in the regular season. So that might happen now.
Her points props 21.5. I'm inclined to play that. I don't know how she's going to get stopped against this Mystics team. And she's gone over this in a lot of her games, but not all. But I think they're playing much better. And the Mystics are not a bad defensive team, but they're not a good defensive team either. So I'd be inclined to play over. I'm just looking at some game logs now for previous seasons against Washington. She had 28 last year in one game, 18 in another. That was a blowout. She played more minutes in one of the games. So there's probably a path where she gets over this. I'm inclined to play the over here. I just don't know who's going to guard her. Stephanie Dolson likely will try to. I think she could have a big day against her. So let's add that. Let's add over 21.5 points for Asia Wilson, which is minus 122. I think we have action on both W games in that regard.
I think I'm going to join you on that one. I like the idea of her kind of gaining momentum after becoming the fastest player to 5,000 points. All right.
I love that idea.
Yeah. I mean, she's my goat. So we'll see what happens, but I love that one. And of course, this wouldn't be WNBA-esque if we did not discuss the matchup tomorrow. That is probably the biggest game of the regular season so far, right? With Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers. What are you eyeing there?
I would think so. Now the key is Caitlin going to play? She's got a growing injury. She's out tonight, so it's a back-to-back situation for Indiana. They're in Dallas tomorrow. I would lay it with the Fever. I think the Wings are playing better. They are, for fact. They had a big win over Atlanta. I don't know how the Dream scored so few. Excuse me, but I couldn't play this without knowing Caitlin Clark's status. That would be my concern. But I think the over is probably the way. Now, 170.5 is a big number. And I had the over in the Dallas-Atlanta game, and then the Dream couldn't score at all. But I think Indiana's going to be the right side. I think this Dallas defense stinks. And I think Arike does more harm than good. I really think she does. Paige will play within herself. She's such an efficient player. She's such a smart player, but she needs better players around her. And the roster Indiana has is so much more loaded. And I just, I worry, so to speak, in terms of like her emergence in the WNBA because of Dallas's weak supporting cast around her. Enrique's good. She's an all-star, but she's not great. She's not nearly as good as she thinks she is in terms of a shooter. And so that's the problem is Indiana's got a much better nucleus when Caitlin Clark came into the league. And then obviously some offseason acquisitions were favorable. I think the Fever are the better team. That's why they're favored by 4.5. It's 4.5 minus 120. Now, if Caitlin plays, it's not going to go to like 7. It could go to 6.5, maybe 5.5, something like that. So I would just wait because I like the Fever side. But the props will be interesting. The prop market with both her and Paige will be good ones once those are posted and we get the status of Caitlin Clark.
Good stuff there. I wonder sometimes if we're going to get you know how popular Caitlin Clark is and how she sells out arenas no matter what state she is in or who she's playing. I wonder if it's one of those situations where it's like her groin is obviously injured, but she does need to rest up a little bit for the Paige Beckers matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just assume she's going to play. They're playing the long game. So even though it's a huge opportunity for the league and everything, and I'm sure the league made a phone call and said, "Hey, can we make sure Caitlin plays on Friday?" That's probably why she's sitting out, but they're worried about the health of her. I mean, look, she already missed 5 games with a quad injury. They're not messing around. They want her to be
Absolutely.
healthy. And, look, sometimes because the concerns also for the fans in the stands, right? They moved this game to American Airlines Center, which is where the Dallas Mavericks play, capacity of 20,000, as opposed to their usual arena, which is capacity of 7,000 plus. So they're going to do what they can to get her to play for those fans and just all the atmosphere and the ambiance and the pomp and circumstance that they can obviously broadcast on regular television. But they're not going to overdo it and jeopardize her health moving forward. She is, they used to say this about Tiger Woods. Does he move the needle? He is the needle, right? She is the
100%.
she is the needle, and they're not going to mess around. But you also, there's a lot to gain with tonight's game or tomorrow night's game. So they're going to let tonight's game slide. She's not going to play. Hopefully they can beat the Sparks and come into this game with good momentum off their road trip or off this continued road trip, so to speak. And I just, there's a chance she doesn't play, right? Growings are tricky, as we all know, from either playing sports or covering sports. And I just don't think they're going to force it, but I do think there's a strategic reason to having her sit tonight, rest. If you could only play one of the games, they definitely want her playing in Dallas tomorrow.
So that being said, we'll see what happens and we'll bet accordingly tomorrow, but maybe save bets until we know her status. All
That's the
right.
way I would play it.
Yeah, same. Doug, I want to lock in your official picks for tonight. And while we're doing that, folks listening in, please have your picks ready and maybe write in the comments what you're doing tonight because we want to see those from you and react accordingly. So, Doug, what are your official picks for tonight?
Just the two in the W I mentioned, and
Mhm.
if you want to take a sprinkle of the Mavs and the futures, but Albert was on the show, did that. I don't want to steal his thunder, but we'll take the Fever over 87.5 points minus 108. That's a team total with Indy. Not my favorite play, but a good enough to play here on the card. And then Asia Wilson over 21.5 points in the other game that as the Aces host the Mystics. That's minus 122 juice at Bet Rivers. I just think she's going to have a field day. The perimeter defense of the Mystics is pretty good, right? With Sykes and some even the rookies. I think the offense of Las Vegas has got to go through Asia. She should be able to dominate against the bigs of the Mystics. Now, maybe the defenses collapse and things like that because I think Washington's really well coached with Sydney Johnson, but Asia's Asia Wilson. She's going to eat from the free throw line and she's going to get a lot of rebounds as well. The pace is going to be high. Both teams want to push the pace. Mystics will push the pace and try to run with Vegas. I think over 21.5 points for Asia is the way to go.
Great stuff. All right, we got anything from the field here? What are y'all doing tonight? Are we watching the W? Are we looking at the futures, or are we kind of set from the draft? Are we looking to see what
Yeah, I mean,
else is out
we
there?
don't have a ton of reaction here on the comments, but we've had some in the last few days, and
Yes.
a lot. I like how we're converting WNBA players and people along those lines, or betters, I should say. Um, we always want to bring people because I love basketball. Basketball's in the summer. I'll bet summer league as well once it arrives here in Las Vegas. But um, there's only 2 games on the W. Not a lot of question marks. I had there was a giant question mark. I think the key for tonight with the 2 games going on is really how Indiana is without Caitlin Clark. We can't make a blanket statement with how they performed earlier in the year in those 5 games because they hadn't figured out life without Caitlin Clark. They also were changing their point guard. Sydney Colson got hurt. DeWanna Bonner was still in the mix. Ari McDonald was special when she came. Now her contract's picked up. So I think Stephanie White, the head coach of the Fever, now knows how to play this and knows what to do. And then people like Kelsey Mitchell and even Lexi Hull, they know how to be a little more assertive with Caitlin Clark out of the lineup. So they're going to run the offense through Mitchell a lot, having her come off curl screens, lefty, off the left-handed side with her being a lefty, drive the hoop. She's one of the fastest players in the league with the ball, if not the single fastest. And depending on who's going to challenge at the rim, there's limited rim protection here with the Sparks. Now, Kelsey Plum will get her points. Hamby will get some. She'll crash the boards. But for the most part, this Sparks team's way more sort of flash and bark than bite. So I'm not too concerned betting against this Sparks team, even without Caitlin Clark. I'm just not pulling the trigger because I know a sharp guy on the Sparks and the points. I just don't see it. So I'd rather go team total for Indiana. I think they're going to come ready to play with that offense. Should be clicking.
Right. I was eyeing the Kelsey Plum total rebounds over 3.5, but I just don't think she has it in her right now.
I'm not a huge Kelsey Plum fan. I think she's a bit overrated. I think she played alongside a really good team and she contributed. Great. Don't get me wrong. But like I think we're seeing like the true Kelsey Plum, very inconsistent, high shot volume. Now she's complaining about the whistle, things like that. But I'm just not the biggest fan of hers in terms of her being like an Olympic starter or anything like that. She's still an all-star, but I think she's a bit overrated.
I'm with you on that. And I think the value of watching a Fever game like tonight is you get to see the team without Clark and see, okay, how can I bet more smartly on this team in future scenarios? Like you don't have to bet on it tonight necessarily, but you can use it to inform yourself on kind of the other supporting cast and see where you can go right or wrong for next time.
No, look, and teach their own. Maybe she's still figuring it out with the new team, new environment, new system. So there's certainly an adjustment period for her in LA.
100%. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next time. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And remember, set your alarms because tomorrow at 4:45 a.m. sharp, we've got a special live tennis show with Nigel, Rory, and Tim breaking down the bracket draw for Wimbledon. As always, live shows are available on demand on YouTube. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.